Please video like and subscribe this channel. I had always believed that life was simple. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. A standard engineering assignment, a human colony on the outer edge of the Giron sector, and nothing extraordinary ever happened. That is, until the day the 3 alien princesses appeared. It started like any other day. I was checking energy conduits in the orbital relay station above the mining colony of Curies 7. The planet's surface below was jagged, covered in jagged crystal formations that glimmered under its twin suns. Routine inspections, minor repairs, my entire existence boiled down to repetitive maintenance and monitoring. And then the alarm sounded. Not the usual malfunction alarm, but a signal of unknown origin, emanating from a nearby sector of space. I had seen it before, a faint, pulsating transmission with no clear pattern, but it was always dismissed as cosmic noise. Not today. Today, it resolved into a physical anomaly, materializing into ships. 3 of them. Sleek, silver, almost organic in design. They shimmered as they moved, pulsating with an energy that made my instruments malfunction. And then, from those ships, they appeared. The first time I saw them, I froze. Not because of fear, though fear played a role, but because nothing in all my training or experience could have prepared me for 3 beings of such striking, almost divine presence. They stepped out of the light, and the station's artificial gravity systems seemed to adjust to their very presence. Tall, regal, radiant, they were unlike anything I had ever seen. Their skin glimmered like polished pearls, their eyes reflected the universe itself, and their hair moved as though it had a life of its own. Each of them carried herself differently, one with calm authority, another with fierce curiosity, and the third with a mischievous, almost playful energy. And then one of them spoke. "Human," she said, her voice reverberating directly in my mind. Not through the station's comm system, but inside me, as though her words bypassed my ears entirely. "We require your assistance." I swallowed. I'm just an engineer. I can check your systems, repair power conduits, that sort of thing. She laughed, a sound like celestial wind through crystal towers. "Your skills are adequate, for now. But your heart, human, is what we seek." Before I could ask what she meant, the other 2 moved closer. Each of them emitted a subtle pulse of energy that seemed to tug at my consciousness, an invitation I could not refuse. It was not physical compulsion, but insistence. They were drawing me into something immense, something beyond understanding. I followed them, almost involuntarily, through the ships. The interiors were alive, the walls pulsating with color and light, shifting constantly. Floors rippled under my feet. I felt as though I had stepped into the inside of a living organism, the entire vessel breathing around me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the vast space. "To see what you are capable of," said the first princess. "To determine if a human can truly understand what the galaxy requires." The second princess's eyes sparkled. "And perhaps to decide if you are worthy of our trust." The third merely smiled, a slight, knowing curve of her lips. "And if you survive our tests, perhaps you will be needed in ways you cannot imagine." The words hung in the air. I had no idea what tests entailed, but I knew instinctively that they would change my life. The first challenge came within the ship's observation chamber. The floor dissolved into nothingness, revealing a holographic projection of a massive asteroid belt, littered with ancient war relics, energy storms, and floating debris. "You must navigate this field," said the first princess. "Using only your wits and limited technology. Failure will not mean death, necessarily, but consequences will follow." I took a deep breath. My engineering training was practical, not combat-oriented, but my mind was steady. I manipulated the ship's energy fields, calculating trajectories, stabilizing motion, and carefully guiding the holographic vessel through impossible odds. Every mistake was corrected, every success noted by the three princesses. When I reached the end, the projection faded, and I turned to face them. "You are clever," said the first princess. "Clever enough to be considered useful." The second princess tilted her head. "Not all humans would survive that. You have patience, calculation, and intuition. It is rare." The third princess stepped closer, her energy brushing against my skin in a sensation that was simultaneously cold and warm. "You feel responsibility. That is why we chose you. That is why we are here." Days, or what seemed like days, passed. Each day brought new tests. I was challenged with moral dilemmas, cosmic puzzles, and scenarios that stretched the limits of human imagination. I had to negotiate with holographic alien civilizations, repair failing ecosystems on virtual planets, and make choices that felt as though they would affect real lives. All the while, the three princesses observed, sometimes interacting, sometimes silent, always assessing. I learned more about their culture in a week than I had in decades of human study. The galaxy was vast, complicated, and every action echoed with consequences I could barely fathom. And through it all, I felt a strange bond forming. The first princess, calm and commanding, often guided my decisions with subtle cues. The second, fierce and inquisitive, challenged my assumptions, forcing me to see possibilities beyond logic. The third, playful and enigmatic, tested my patience and moral compass in ways I could not predict. Together, they were a force, and yet, they were strangely human in their curiosity, their amusement, and their concern. One moment stood out above all. I had been placed on a virtual planet with a failing civilization, one facing imminent annihilation from a collapsing sun. My task: save as many as possible with limited resources. Every decision meant a life gained or lost. My hands shook as I rerouted energy, stabilized planetary shields, and calculated survival odds. As the crisis ended, the princesses appeared before me in full projection. The first said, "You acted with compassion, even knowing the cost. That is rare." The second whispered, "And your choices were wise, yet unpredictable. You think as a human, yet see as one who can command a galaxy." The third touched my arm lightly. "And you cared, in a way that matters. That is why we are here, Elias. You were more than your job. You are more than your work. You are the link we need." I felt a lump in my throat. I had thought this was just a job, a routine assignment. But it was never just a job. It had been a test, a journey, and a summons to something far greater. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. The princesses led me to the heart of their flagship, a chamber that pulsed with the energy of a small star. "You have passed all tests," the first said. "Not because of skill alone, but because of your heart, your choices, and your courage. You understand what many cannot, the responsibility of power and compassion intertwined." The second added, "We have observed humanity in you. Its flaws, its beauty, its potential. And we have chosen to include you in our plans for the galaxy." The third smiled, gently placing her hand on my shoulder. "You were not meant to be just a job. You were meant to be part of something larger, something enduring. You have awakened your destiny." I felt the weight of their words, the gravity of their presence. My life, once ordinary, mundane, and predictable, had shifted in an instant. I had become part of a story that spanned the stars, connected to three beings of unimaginable power and vision. And in that moment, I realized how small decisions like showing up on time, fixing a conduit, or simply caring enough to act, could ripple across the cosmos in ways I could never anticipate. The following cycles were a mixture of wonder and adjustment. I learned to navigate alien politics, to understand the culture and power of the princess's empire, and to act decisively when crises arose. I was still human, still limited by my biology and experience, but with their guidance and trust, I began to see the galaxy differently. We traveled together, through systems both familiar and alien, encountering civilizations in need of guidance, planets on the brink of collapse, and rogue forces threatening peace. Each challenge tested not just my mind but my humanity. And each time, the princesses were there not as rulers above me, but as companions, mentors, and sometimes challengers who pushed me beyond what I thought possible. Through it all, a bond formed, a deep, unspoken connection between the three princesses and the human who had thought he was only on a routine job. Their presence was a constant reminder that life, in all its vastness and complexity, often defies expectation. Years passed, or what felt like years. I was no longer just the engineer assigned to a routine mission. I was part of something larger, something enduring, something that mattered. The princesses, three alien, extraordinary beings, had altered the course of my life, showing me that even the most mundane tasks can ripple into destiny. And I never forgot the first moment I saw them, standing before me, radiant, formidable, and impossibly alive, declaring that my ordinary life had changed forever. I had thought it was just a job. I had been wrong.